I'm here with Ashkan Karbasfrooshan.
Very good.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.
So, every once in a while I read your articles sort of kicking the industry in the butt about some topic, so I want you to rant for me. So what's currently bugging you?
Well, what's bugging me, I think, is I love technology and I love the VCs that fund technologists, but I think sometimes we're a bit crazy and it's good to put ourselves in the shoes of others. So I think the tech world is all upset about, these bills that the content lobby is trying to pass, e-parasites and protect IP, which are actually pretty bad bills, I'm sure. But I always say, well, why do you think they're going nuclear? Why do you think that they want to do these things to take down these UGC sites? Because, they don't like the fact that tech companies essentially allow themselves to go and build these businesses, for lack of better words, on the back of, their IP. So I'm not saying I don't see the other side. There's arguments on both sides, but I just think that when all of a sudden the tech world and the VCs go crazy and they're like, oh my God, these bills are horrible, where I'm like, well, wait a second, why don't you just go put yourself in the shoes of the other side, and maybe you'd understand that they're basically doing exactly what you do, which is it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. They're not asking for your permission now to push these bills, the way you don't ask for permission when you take one of their videos and upload them to a site, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if people just put themselves in the shoes of others, we would all get along, so to speak. So that was, I think, one of the latest articles there.
So give me name names. Give me someone who has recently egregiously pirated content and pleaded, oh hey, it's not me uploading it, it's our users.
Well, I think to be fair now, media organizations have changed their tune a bit in the sense that they realize that we could maybe slow down what's happening, but it's not going to prevent it from happening, right? You take a look at music. Music has been so decimated that maybe they're a bit more willing to play along. Now this is where I sort of change my tune and I go that, like I always say, even in the extreme case of Napster, well, isn't it a good thing that Napster had enough protection under the DMCA to be set up in the US? Imagine if Napster was in China. Well, then guess what? Napster would have never been shut down, But the irony is when Napster was...
And actually there are, I have Chinese friends who go to all those similar Chinese sites,
totally.
And we just did a project with the US State Department where we got flown over to Moldova to sort of train government agencies in all things digital. And one of the things he learned there was that ISPs compete for consumers by sort of advertising their ability to help you download pirated content faster than the next competitor.
I got to move to Moldova, I guess. Yeah. No, but you have to be careful what you ask for, right? I mean, when the recording industry killed Napster, then it sort of spawned Kazaa and all these things that were not even centralized. So then it was really hard to put the genie back in the bottle. But so yeah, I don't think it's so much anymore that, oh my God, big bad technology firms are ripping off old media anymore, because I think you've seen what happens when that, like companies will litigate and VCs are a bit more wary. I just think it's that sort of hypocrisy that, it's great for VCs to come out and go, look at the jobs that we are creating. Well, you know what? Guess what? Napster sort of, or whoever, file sharing hurt record labels, and there were jobs that were lost there. So there's always a counter argument, and I just think in our industry and in any industry, people just seem to be very sort of disingenuous when they make these claims. So I always like the point of the articles is there's no rage behind the articles. I'm not angry at anyone. Life is pretty good. It's more just to say this is like I am the bullshit Teflon guy who is like, I don't buy any of the press. I don't buy the forecasts. It's things are a lot harder in the trenches. You could have the commander-in-chief say that the war's going great, but when you're a soldier out in front, you're like, wait a second, what do you mean it's going great? I don't have a foot, you know what I mean? So I think that's sort of the overarching theme of the articles, whether it's the articles I write on my blog or Media Post or TechCrunch or Paid Content or GigOm or wherever.
Were you just on a panel?
Yes, we just had a panel. I got 2 cancellations this morning, so I had to scramble, but I did find...
Oh, you were the moderator?
Yeah, I was the moderator, yeah. So at the risk of offending the...
I would have subbed in. What was the topic?
It was how streaming is changing television and all that. I would have asked you, it's just that you were doing an interview this morning. It was so selfish of you. I was like, I need...
With the Comcast keynote speaker.
Fair enough, yeah. So, no, it went really good. I think the idea was, you know, television is not dead. Television is actually doing quite well. Television, we could argue again as early adopters that is broken and all that. Not so. I think a lot of people still like to just lean back and watch TV. But we do realize that, you know, is television and Hollywood, are they going to avoid the fate of newspapers and the recording industry? I don't think it'll be as bad, but obviously the television will have to shrink. And that's what the internet does. The internet shrinks industries. The internet makes... You
mean it shrinks the dollar, dollar value that industry can extract from its end audience?
Yeah, that the incumbent, the established, you know, the establishment will always come out weaker. And even if the total size of the pie grows, which was, I don't think was the case in music, because music now is making a fraction of what it was, but music is a unique, you know, case. You could argue that, you know, telcos are doing fine even after Skype, because then they move into different areas, et cetera, et cetera. You know, same way that if a labor pool gets disrupted and they lose jobs, ideally they should go get re-engineered, learn technology, and move into other fields. So you could apply that parallel to industries as well. But I think without a doubt, television is going to sort of change and shrink, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, you look at a company like YouTube, YouTube's parent Google has 40 billion in cash. Apple has 80 billion in cash. That's 120 billion dollars that is going to be largely deployed to go after television. And you know, you hear about the 75 billion dollars annually that is spent on advertising and TV in the US, ad DVD sales and theatrical and all that, and you're talking about a 250 billion dollar, you know, pool of revenue. I mean, Google and Apple are gunning for that, as well as Amazon and to a lesser extent maybe Netflix and all that. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of disruption. But so what our panel was doing was balancing that, surprisingly. Even though the guys who are like digital ad guys, they're like, you know what, this talk that TV's dead, it ain't dead. Because even Glenn Beck, for example, guess where he's going to go promote his new online venture? He's going to run ads on Fox, say, you guys miss me. He's going to run an ad on CNN during the presidential elections. Much the same way that, you know, you see, shockingly, or not shockingly, you'll see ads for television in newspapers and magazines. It makes sense to use a large media to promote, you know, a more evolved form of media. So that's it. And you know, it's like there's a gentleman I know at a big company that I won't name. He said that, you know, these conferences are great, but it's a bit like an AA meeting where you just realize everyone has the same problems as you do, and it's just like, you know, you sit there and it's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. This is a problem. And I think it's good to get that, but at the same time, it's good to, you know, not care about the naysayers, not care about what the analysts say, and just execute and execute well. And, you know, blocking and tackling usually will allow you to get your job done and grow your business.
Now you have a company.
Yes, I do. Aside from writing and pontificating on panels, I actually somehow find time to be CEO of WatchMojo.com, which is a producer of video content. We've been around since 2006, which for an internet business is like an eternity, and for a video company is, you know, the ice age. I would say we survived because actually I would say we never raised venture capital. I'll be very honest, I think if we had raised venture capital early on, I think in 2000...
They would have pressured you to do things you maybe didn't want to do.
Well, okay, well, when we early on started to talk in 2006, there was always talk of how fast, like we sign you a check, how fast can you add user-generated content on the site? And I was like, why would we want to add UGC and become, you know, a tiny equivalent of Rever and YouTube or Metacafe or Dailymotion? I was like, I want to be a leader in premium, you know, between Hollywood Super Premium and UGC. So I could see there was a lot of things that I didn't like. At the time then in 2007 and 2008, a lot of them were also like enamored with the demand media model of just here's a dashboard and get a far-flung team of, you know, a ragtag assortment of writers.
Sweatshop.
That's it. And I was like, no. I was like, if your audience is VCs or Wall Street, you want that model because it looks and sounds great. I go, but if your audience, like your clients are going to be other media companies who might want content and other advertisers that want to advertise against that content, I was like, they don't care about how much content you can produce and how cheaply you can produce it. They want value. So there was always a lot of issues, but I think the flip side was if we would have raised capital, they probably would have shut us down in 08 or 09 because we were not going to be the next big Facebook in their portfolio. So they would have said, Ash, let's go for a walk, and then bullet in the...
For them, you would have been the Walking Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Making a little bit of money.
But it would have been like, oh, now sometimes media companies are cherished, even if they're a bit smaller or not going to be the big platform, because media does... You know, we fall in love with media, and you know, people always say, why was Steve Jobs so, you know, not too many CEOs pass away and there's this outpouring of emotion. Steve Jobs, there was this outpouring of emotion because he was a very, very gifted, unique person. Al Gore was right. The kind of guy like that comes across every 250 years. But I think at a very sort of basic element, because he allowed a lot of people to almost become one with media. And we're very, very, there's a romantic notion around music and photos, and especially the fact that your mobile device is on you all the time, right? So I think VCs, I think now are starting to come around, and aside from the fact that, you know, there's always a lot of influence that is carried through media and content, I think now VCs are starting to get it that, okay, just because it's not my strength, it's not my background, and, you know, I used to be a semiconductor guy or a software guy or a telco guy, they get it, that they'll go, if I'm going to deploy capital and the pipes are built and the platforms are built, you now need content, because audiences, you know, the example I use is how many times you're there at night bored refreshing a page for new content, or your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed. People consume content, and it's not a zero-sum game. You know, if you're going to buy a Mac or a PC, chances are you're going to buy a Mac or a PC. But content, if I'm traveling to Barcelona, I'm going to read 10 articles on Barcelona and watch 10 videos on Barcelona. On our site, you know, we get most of our views outside on YouTube, in taxi cabs in LA, and in schools in, you know, France that use our videos to teach English. And it's like we ended up in all these places that a lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh, I had this vision. No, I mean, there's some things we sort of had a vision. A lot of stuff happened to even our own surprise. But you know, even on our side, we feature content from super premium traditional media through our partnerships with Hulu and whatnot. We don't have any UGC, but we don't view it as content creators are, you know, competitive. We look at it as content actually enables other content. You know, it's as a discovery and recovery.
As you look forward to 2012, what are all your different revenue streams, and what do you see the mix for 2012?
Sure. Great question. So our model is a matrix, right? So we have on one axis, we have platforms. So we have internet, mobile, out of home, OTT, and now you can even add offline, because if a academic publisher like Pearson wants to license our content and put it on a portal, intranet, or offline on a DVD for students, that's like offline to us, you know? And then on terms of the types of deals, you have revenue share deals, which are the standard, the deals where, you know, you put your content on YouTube, and whether they sell or you sell the ads, you do a split. You have advertising deals that basically are a sponsor wants to run pre-roll or sponsorships and all that. And we are actually probably the only company that amongst the new media content producers that also have a lot of licensing deals. We don't license clips on a one-off basis. It's not worth anybody's time. But we do offer sometimes a wholesale license to the catalog or to a vertical. So if somebody wants our health and fitness, or if somebody wants our travel or sports. So we've historically, actually, believe it or not, sadly, just to show you the state of the industry, we've made more money from licensing early on, where it was just guaranteed revenue. And, you know, we didn't have the big VC to say, you know, let's use this as a cushion, as in a safety net, but let's take on all the speculative deals out there in the world. So we actually held back distribution to keep the lights on, so to speak, get, you know, recurring revenue in to make sure that we could have a full-time team of producers to build the catalog. Now, again, I think I'm a very candid CEO, and that ended up hurting us at some point. And I knew it was going to hurt us. It wasn't like, oh my God, shocking. It held back distribution. So whereas a lot of companies have managed to grow, let's say, their streams to whatever, 50 million or 100 million, we didn't have that big of a, you know, like you look at our catalog and you're like, wow, these guys must be doing 1 billion streams. And we held it because we said it doesn't make sense to get more views if we're going to be living in a box on a street there, you know. So that was something that we addressed, and then somehow, akin to changing a jet engine at 30,000 feet, we started to take on more speculative deals to grow views and reach without necessarily getting more revenue, but also not blowing existing revenue streams. So now we are more ad supported. And another thing we don't want to do is, you know, we live in a world where, that was the DMCA article was on TechCrunch. My media post was, I was joking, talking about the Occupy YouTube moment, because YouTube represents the 1%, because they actually own 47% of views in the US, but it's a very challenging platform to make money on, right? We make about 40% of our views are on YouTube. You know, we're representative of the web. But then everywhere else, you see a lot of...
Well, actually, let me follow that through. 40% of your total views are on YouTube. What percentage of your revenue comes from YouTube?
Okay, so to really, because this is like online media, we can get into the nuts and bolts because I think it's interesting. YouTube a few years ago turned on the switch and started running basically text ads as overlays on top of the videos. So to be fair to them, that from the get-go, the second that did that, that was driving more revenue from, let's say, Google, the corporation, even though over 50% of the overall Google revenue stream was coming from paid search links as overlay. What was, let's say, media display banners and YouTube and pre-rolls was always less than the search basically stuff. But over time now, I would say, to be fair, they probably still only generate like 10% of our revenues. Now, the area that we don't really want to go into, and we did in Q4 of last year, and it spilled over to Q1 because there was so much demand, was basically doing a lot of in-banner. And a lot of companies, they have massive numbers and massive reach because that's what they do. They take videos, they bundle it with ads and give a player to third-party sites, and they run it in banner. And I wrote an article in the spring saying this is going on. I almost wrote it purposely not to be a crazy whistleblower, but just to say, look, I'm putting a timestamp on this. We do this in case somebody comes and says, you guys are doing this. I'm admitting it, but we're very transparent about it. But we had one situation where an advertiser called us and they said, well, in this one case, there's one of the players is below the fold and we don't tolerate that. And I said, you know what? I don't want to be in this space because I can't really guarantee that this will never happen again. And I go, I don't want to be the hypocritical a-hole that goes out there, writes these articles about transparency and being fair and this and that, but whose company does something like this. So it had an adverse effect on revenues. And because we don't have a VC, I don't necessarily have to do things that would maybe be too risky and hurt us down the road. But the flip side is that, yeah, guess what? We're not generating $1 billion in revenue. We will never be maybe $1 billion exit. But I still think that while it's the long-term approach and it takes time to, I do think that WatchMojo will probably be one of the leading brands in the next 10 years just because of, look at how much content is consumed and look at how little professional content is actually created. You talk to a VC, their definition of a content investment is investing in a UGC platform to allow users to upload content. That's crazy, that's not content. You invested in a technology, which is fine, but for you to think that that's content just shows how crazy the argument is. And given the way history repeats itself and all that, look at how where do we get our news sources now? We get them on TechCrunch. We don't get them on Business Week anymore. We don't get them on Fortune. I used to subscribe to those magazines. I don't even check their websites anymore, right? So there's always this new breed of media that comes out and becomes very strong, but it's possible that even if their value is high, they might generate, it's because their multiples are higher, they generate less revenue, but they're still great businesses. I don't think we're going to kill Viacom. I don't talk like that. I don't think we're going to kill NBC, but I just do think that we're going to have a very nice business that they might want one day to be part of their empire, or that print media would want, or that the ad network. So I built a business that just said, I don't want to be the 100th company trying to be the #1 platform. I don't want to be the Google of video because Google will be the Google of video through YouTube. But I do want a company that is a low risk, potentially high reward, venture, and I think content is that. But I just don't think the VCs understand that because it's not what they were doing when they were 20, 30. They were building the Intels of the world. They were building the IBMs of the world, the Microsofts. So I think the problem is we do need more VCs and financiers who hail from content. The problem is that the content executives that would have that money, they've been disrupted by technology. So when they emerge, they don't want to go fund content, they want to go fund technology. So I sometimes wish that the Ash of 2012 could go back and talk to the Ash of 2006 and be like, are you sure you want to go into content? Like, it's really a passion play. Like, it might be a business, but it's fun. I mean, it's a great industry and it's a great time to be doing what we do. But like when people talk about content as a joke, I'm like, and they say, oh, I'm going to have this new book idea or something, I'm going to make so much money. I'm like, time out. As a joke, tongue in cheek, I'm like, am I the content expert? Am I the advertising expert? Yeah, okay, yeah, you think so? So listen to me. There's no money to be made in content. If you make money in content, it's an exception. It's not the rule. But I do think that those who survive, and we did survive, let's say, I think then you do build a nice business. But yeah, it's a tough business. Content is really, really not for the faint of heart.
All right, well, Ash, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.